Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, we're back with a recap episode. Unfortunately, we're breaking down USC's first loss of the 2025 season. They drop a conference game to Illinois, 34-32. Heartbreaking last-minute finish. I'm curious, Cody, it's been 24 hours plus since you watched the initial game, and I know you've watched game film many times at this point. Wondering what your thoughts are overall at this point.
Yeah, this is a tough one. There's a lot of stuff that stood out to me on film, a lot of things that need to get corrected. There were still some positives as well, and it's tough to see those in a loss, and I'm excited to kind of dive into that this episode. But yeah, this one hurt. This was a game that I felt USC should have won. They worked so hard to come back. They had some things that they had to overcome, some injuries. They didn't play their best on both sides of the football. The defense had a chance to put the game away there at the end, and they just couldn't get that stop. So yeah, this is one of those you go back and watch the film and you're kicking yourself because there's so many things that we could have done better to give ourselves a chance to win this football game or to walk away with the victory on the road. Big noon kickoff in the Big Ten, a tough conference opponent, and it's tough to lose this one, especially going into a bye week. Now, the positive with that is that there's going to be time for guys to recover and get healthy, and injuries were a big factor in this game. But the other thing, as a former player, is now you have to sit on this for an entire week, and you don't get to turn the page and go out there and play right away. And you've got to wait a whole week to really focus on what happened in this game, and then you get a chance to go get it, go get after it against Michigan. But yeah, it's a tough one all the way around. There's no easy way to put it, but there are some things I want to talk about on film that this team can build off of, but also some things they need to learn from.
Alrighty, Cody, excited to get your perspective on this one. Before we do, just a couple reminders. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also look at the video version of the show on the USC Athletics YouTube channel. You can also follow us on our socials, Victory Pod USC. You can also get schedule updates that way, but I will give a schedule update now. It is a bye week, and thus this podcast is taking a bye. Cody and I need a break a little bit, so we're going to rest and recharge. So we'll take off a Wednesday and the recap episode that we usually record on a Sunday. So no episodes. We'll be back for the preview episode when it comes to Michigan. So just a PSA when you're looking in your feed and don't see us for just a little bit, just a week. Alrighty, Cody, I'm going to keep us in our normal organization that we do on the recap podcast, basically going offense, defense, position wise. I think it will just keep us organized in that sense. I know as you're a former quarterback, you like talking about the quarterback play first. What did you see from Jade Mayava against Illinois?
Yeah, I was very pleased with the way that Jaden Mayava played in this football game. For the majority of the game, I thought he did a good job of handling the moment. You go on the road, big noon kickoff, national stage. You haven't really had a tough matchup yet. Michigan State is a good football team. Purdue's a good football team, but you haven't had that top tier opponent in the Big Ten yet. And now you go on the road and you get a chance to go show what you can do against this type of defense. And I thought he passed the test. I thought he did a good job. Had a couple mistakes early on, had that interception. That's something you've got to learn from. You can't force that throw. You got to recognize that linebacker's sitting in that window. And that kid made a good play. Rosiak on defense. That was a guy that we previewed as a key player at that linebacker spot.
Yeah.
Jumped to the right, got out of the screen a little bit. It looked like he was going to buy that run fake and starting to go out. And then at the last second, he retraced and got underneath that throw. Just if it's tight and if it's messy like that, just reset and go out to the outside or throw it away and move on. Just don't force that throw. But look, he hasn't had a turnover problem, so that's not something that I'm going to worry about. I'm not going to put too much emphasis on that. But what was most important for me is how he responded after that. They come out in the second half. He throws that interception 5 plays into that drive. And then the next drive, get the ball back, go 3 and out. It felt like that game was maybe getting out of hand. The score's 24-10 at this point. I'm a little worried about this offense. They get out of rhythm. They have, that interception, then they have the 3 and out. But after that, they go 11 plays, 81 yards, touchdown. 11 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. And then they go 9 plays, 80 yards, touchdown, and they take the lead with less than 2 minutes to go in that game. That is huge. And look, I know it's a loss, but you can't let the loss overshadow some of these positives. For him to be able to put that interception behind him and not get down on himself and not go in the tank and not let the crowd affect him, because after that, you could hear that 12th man that we always talk about on the road. That's a real factor. And the crowd was back into the game and they were excited. And now they have a 14-point lead. And it feels like that's a time to where it could have completely gone the opposite direction. But huge credit to Jade Mayava, Lincoln Riley as well, keeping his quarterback focused and in the moment. So huge shout out to him there. And then the other thing, though, I will say, and we talked about a little bit with some of the areas he could have been better at, something we have mentioned the first 3 weeks or the first 4 weeks of the season was the accuracy issues. And I didn't want to be too critical of him because we're winning football games and he's playing at a high level. But I mentioned there were times that he was missing some of these open throws that weren't hurting him in those games, but it could come back and hurt him later on. And in this game, it got him a little bit. He had multiple times where he had guys open. He was overthrowing them. He missed high a lot in this football game. That just tells me that his footwork wasn't timed up with his mechanics and his upper body. And you could see it at times where his feet were kind of facing right, throwing back left. And the rush got to him at times. The offensive line did a good job for the most part throughout the day, but you could see that he wasn't finishing his throw and kind of releasing it out here instead of extending out. And that's what makes you throw it a little bit high right there, and you keep that front shoulder up. So that's a little bit more of a mechanical thing for me than it is, okay, this guy just has an accuracy issue. So that's something he can fix. But some of those throws were in crucial points in this football game, and he missed a couple in a row that could have extended drives. And on top of that, he missed some of those throws high that were putting his receiver in harm's way, to where he had Lake McCree take a shot or Walker Lyons take a shot and throwing it high and let these guys get some of those rib shots. So that's something he's got to clean up. But look, this loss in no way, shape, or form is on the quarterback. But at the end of the day, I understand that the win-loss record only falls around two people, and that's the head coach and the quarterback. But Jade Mayava did enough good things in this game to give them a chance to win. I love the way that he responded after that interception. I love that his teammates could look at him, and you can see that on TV when you watch from home. I love when they zoom in on a quarterback's eyes. You can tell if they're flustered and they're
You've always
worried
said that,
and
yeah.
they're struggling, or you can tell if they're locked in and they're just stone cold and they're ready to go. And Jaden Mayava has that it factor when it comes to being a leader, and his teammates around him can really see that. And I feel very comfortable with 14 going forward.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, just putting his performance in a vacuum. Do you feel like this was the next step forward for Jaden, in the sense that we knew adversity was going to come at some point, that he wasn't going to be flawless at some point? Given how he responded post interception, do you feel like he's grown in that regard from what we've seen in the last, like even going back to the last season?
Yeah, I'm very impressed with his development right now. I mean, just going from where he was 4 games last year to 4 games this year, now 5 games after this Illinois game, and like I mentioned, being able to overcome that adversity, I feel great going forward with Jaden Mayava. There were some issues in this football game, and there are some reasons that we lost this game and things that need to be corrected. But Jaden Mayava is not one of those reasons. He's a guy that I trust no matter any game that we're in, whether we get down, we're ahead, whatever the situation is, and whatever those circumstances are. I feel comfortable that Jaden Mayava can find a way to win that game.
Now, I want to move over to USC's receivers, and I'm saying receivers because I want to bunch the wide receivers and the tight ends together. I thought both, like you mentioned earlier, Lake McCree and Walker Lyons made some crucial catches, but Makai Lemon, he is the real deal. We did not doubt that, but once again, he put the team on his back and made some spectacular catches.
Yeah, I sound like a broken record, and I don't get tired of it. This kid is a star. I mean, he in my opinion, is going to be one of the great ones here at USC. And I know it's early, but no one can watch that film and tell me otherwise. He is an absolute weapon on the offensive side of the ball. We've called it, and I'm not to pat our own backs here at the Victory Pod, and I'm
You
going to keep
pat your
bringing this
back,
up every
Cody.
chance I can. But we've been calling this since he came out of high school. I was very impressed with him at Los Al. I thought he was a great player coming out of high school, and just I know it doesn't matter now, or it might be something that was, not a big thing with his development now, but just the mindset that he has when it comes to being a team first type of guy. I mean, people forget he played defensive back a couple years ago
Yeah.
because we were short on DBs and he just wanted to be on the field. And that would have been, not a huge deal if it was like, all right, he's stuck with that position. He played DB. It worked out. He just did it so that he could help this football team win games. And now he's one of the best wide receivers in college football. It's just so impressive. The talent is off the chart. 11 receptions, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns in this game. Could have been more. Left a couple out there. And Mayava, like I mentioned, missed him on a couple throws. But yeah, for him to step up the way that he has been these last couple of weeks with Jacoby Lane dealing with an injury has been very impressive. Even when Jacoby comes back, I still expect Makai to have the production that he's having. He's going to be a great player on Sundays. I've seen what it looks like to be at that next level and what the good ones look like in college and how that's going to transition to the NFL. I truly believe that Makai Lemon's going to be one of those guys. And then speaking of Jacoby Lane, like I just mentioned, I got to give him a shout out too for
Yeah.
going out there, not being 100%, fighting through some of that pain, fighting through some of those injuries that he's been dealing with. And it wasn't like he was just a decoy. He caught 4 passes in this game. He
Yeah.
made some crucial catches and stepped up big time for his football team. So that was great to see. The tight ends are getting better and better. This offense is so much more dynamic when Walker Lyons and Lake McCree are involved, and not just one catch, here and there, or maybe one catch a game, but when they're legit factors in this offense, it's so difficult for a defense to have to prepare for multiple pass catching tight ends like USC has right now. So we have to keep that up. And then another guy that keeps stepping up and making some big plays, especially on that corner out early in this game, getting some of those spark plays, is Tanook Hines. I've been very impressed with the freshman. But yeah, this bunch is obviously led by Makai Lemon, and he's, I mean, in my opinion, I know it's early still. I know he's got a long way to go, and he's got to continue to stack good games, but he could be one of the great ones here at USC.
I'm glad you gave a shout out to Jacoby because Coach Riley said after the game that he wasn't even scheduled to play. He basically like forced his way in because he wanted the team to win that badly. So shout out to him for playing through pain. But I was curious, Cody, we've talked about it before. I think we even talked about it in the last recap episode. We're pro USC having maybe just two wide receiver stars, compared to maybe last year. But when that one star goes down, does that change what we've seen from USC's offense? I feel like obviously they're more potent with two wide receiver stars, but how much do the tight ends make up in that factor? What are you seeing there when Jacoby's out of the game?
Yeah, that's a great point. Two things with that. One is we've been so great in the run game that I feel better even if we are missing Lane one game or Lemon one game or we aren't at full strength at the receiver position because the run game is so good. Because if it wasn't, then I'd be concerned. And then the other thing that I don't have, a lot of concern when we miss one of those guys is the tight ends are playing great. And they're not just catching these little slide routes and these little hitch routes and these stick routes for 4 or 5 yards. They're catching footballs down the field on some seam routes, on some high corner routes. That was an unbelievable catch by Lake McCree to slide his foot in bounds, make the catch,
Yeah.
and still keep the ball through contact with the ground. That was very impressive. Walker Lyons caught a ball over the middle and took an absolute shot. Mayava got to protect him on that, but still to go out there and put his body on the line and make those plays, it's great to see. And if those guys weren't a factor right now in the pass game, yes, I would be very concerned with missing Lane because Tunic Hines is coming along well. Jaden Richardson had a couple catches. Prince Strawn been up and down. Zacharias Williams is dealing with some of those injury issues. Jay Fair, some of these young guys and some of these veterans and guys that have been here for a while have stepped up at times, but it's so much more comforting when we miss Lane on the field to have two tight ends that can go up and make up for some of that production.
We were also on injury watch for USC's offensive line with Elijah Page and whether or not he was going to play. He ultimately did not, but unfortunately, the injury news continued for USC's offensive line. Killian O'Connor went down, unfortunately went to the locker room, came back with a heavy brace. So we don't have any updates as far as Killian's status as of now. Obviously, hoping for the best for him. Such a hard worker, walk on to scholarship guy. You know that he really cares about this team. But overall, Cody, how did you see this offensive line respond and having two starters down?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't perfect, and there were some plays I'm sure they would like to have back. But overall, for what this offensive line has dealt with these last 2 weeks, and to go out there and perform like they did on the road against a very good conference opponent and a very good defensive line, I was impressed. I was proud of how they played, of how they fought. I can tell you one thing that's a tough group up front. That's a group that's not going to make any excuses. I mean, last week against Michigan State, you lose Elijah Page, who's arguably your best left tackle or your best offensive lineman, one of the best left tackles in the country. And these guys don't miss a beat. Tawanu'u goes to left tackle. Tobias Raymond goes from left guard to right tackle. I don't think people understand how hard it is to go from guard to tackle. And now you're going to the opposite side of the offensive line and still performing at a high level. And then Micah Benuelos comes in, a guy that's got some experience already this year at left guard, and they don't miss a beat. They did a good job. But then this week was a whole new challenge. And losing your center as a quarterback, and I'm speaking from personal experience, it's so difficult to lose your center because I truly believe he's the most important guy on offense. And people can say, no, that's the QB. Coming from me, that's the center. He has to make all those calls. He has to make the same calls that the quarterback does. He has to be able to identify fronts, identify protection, make the right run fits. He's not just doing it for himself either. He's speaking to the right side of the line, the left side of the line, and then on top of that, you have to go out and be physically dominant the entire game as well. Going up against probably the biggest, meanest, nastiest guy they have on defense, which are those 320-pound nose tackles, and you can't miss a beat and you have to be perfect. And then you also have to snap the ball and worry about all these other things. So to miss your center or to lose your center in this game is so difficult. But I thought John Ray Reed came in and stepped up for this football team. Now, there was that penalty on the alignment downfield, and they had that touchdown pass to Mekhi Lemon. We'll talk about that in a second, what went wrong. Had a couple high snaps that I'm sure he would like to have back. But overall, I thought he did a good job. And this isn't like it's some true freshman coming in who's never played before. This is a veteran who has a lot of starts under his belt in Division I football. He knows what it takes to play, in this type of environment, in this type of atmosphere. And it was a close competition this offseason. It was going back and forth between Reed and Killian O'Connor. O'Connor got the nod, but they still felt comfortable with Reed if he had to come in and play, and you could see that on Saturday. So I thought they did a good job in pass protection. Only gave up one sack on the day, and Mayava obviously made them right on some of those plays where he had to avoid the rush and extend the play. But overall, I thought they did a good job of winning their one-on-ones in pass protection, especially on the outside. Run game was solid, wasn't great. It had been a little bit better earlier this season. That wasn't our best day running the football, but we did get behind in this game, so we kind of were forced later on to throw it a little bit more and not lean heavily on the run game towards the end like we have seen the last couple of weeks. But like I mentioned, overall, I was proud of this offensive line for what they've had to deal with these last 2 weeks. You got to give credit to Zach Hanson and the rest of the guys up front for stepping up.
Well, you mentioned the run game and playing from behind. Unfortunately, that came off of a fumble by Wayman Jordan. I thought he did bounce back though and played well the rest of the game. But you've always talked about, Cody, you can't have turnovers on the road. Obviously, you don't want turnovers ever, but you can't have turnovers on the road, and you got to pack a run game. So it was a tough one to start the game with.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too, though. I think that is important before we talk about that is, the way that he bounced back. And it happened against Georgia Southern, where he fumbled the football and he had to bounce back in that game. And it happened obviously on Saturday against Illinois. And my first thought was, what are they going to do next? Is Eli Sanders going to be in there? Are they going to go pass heavy this next series? Is it going to be, Lincoln Riley kind of avoiding giving him the football? But that wasn't the case. They went right back to Wayman Jordan that very next play, that very next drive. He got the first carry. I love that. I love that by Lincoln Riley. Keep your confidence in your young back. He's a good football player. He's still learning how to play at the Division I level, and he's off to a great start. You can't let those fumbles dictate his confidence for the rest of the day. Still had a solid performance, 20 carries, 94 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Now, with that being said, and all the praise and all the things that he's done well, and I'm the biggest believer. Go back and check. I have receipts. Go check the tape.
You
I am
do.
the biggest Wayman Jordan believer, and I truly think he's going to be one of the best running backs in the country by the end of the year when it's all said and done. I think he's going to be a guy that can play on Sundays, but being critical of him, and I know he's going to be critical of himself, that has to stop. The first one, okay, the opening drive fumble, it's a one off. Now it happens again, and it's becoming a theme and it's becoming consistent. That can't happen anymore. You don't want to fumble at any time in the game, but to fumble on that opening series, especially on the road against a very good football team and spotting them basically 7 points, and more importantly, keeping the crowd in it and getting them involved. And they're already amped up on that opening series, but then you get the fumble and the turnover, and now that 12th man becomes real again, and they're a factor in this football game. That just can't keep happening. You can't put yourself at a disadvantage in these football games. The margin for error is so small in conference games against a top 25 opponent. And then when you go on the road, it becomes even smaller. And, like I mentioned, you can't spot this Illinois football team 7 points. It's a good team. One of my keys to the game when we were talking about this one was you have to start fast. This was the opposite of starting fast. And then the unfortunate part was USC was moving the football well
Yeah.
on that drive. It felt like, all right, we're going to go down, go up 7-0, set the tone of this game, kind of establish our dominance early on. And then that crucial fumble happens, and now we're looking at a 7-0 deficit to start. So that's something that's got to get fixed. I'm still a firm believer in Wayman Jordan. I'm not worried about the production he's going to have the rest of this year. Keep giving him the football. He bounced back great, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he has to find a way to eliminate that fumble issue, especially on the opening drive of the game.
Well, you mentioned going into detail about that trick play and the penalty, Cody. I'm going to give you the floor here to explain what happened there.
Yeah, I'll say this as an offensive minded guy. I am so upset that that play got called back because that would have been one of the all timers. That would have been on a highlight reel for years to come. Just the way that Lincoln Riley can think outside of the box in that moment is so impressive. It really was. You go out there and I believe they try, and I'd love to ask Lincoln this. I know he won't be on Trojans Live tomorrow because it's a bye week and he gets some time off. But I would love to ask him because when they came off, if you remember on that series, they come off the sideline and Wayman Jordan lines up at Wildcat and they get the delay a game because it feels like, oh, everything's unorganized and Wayman Jordan's not used to seeing the play clock like a quarterback is. So they get the
Yeah.
delay game, which is you got to eliminate that penalty. That was tough. So I think they were going to try to call it right there on the first play of the drive in that Wildcat formation. But then Lincoln said, all right, we got the penalty. Now it's 1st and 15. Let's run it after our first down. That's normally when you run your trick plays. After you get a first down, you have a fresh set of downs. Let's run it. Or it's the first play of the drive. But they get that first down and then they go to Wildcat. It looks like a Wildcat play all the way. Nothing tied onto it. Wayman Jordan's going to take it. Jade Mayava split out wide. Hey, just get out of the play. Don't block anybody. Don't go for a pass. Just get out of the way and back up. That's what you're taught as a quarterback. As soon as the ball snap, just back up. Get your butt out of the way. Don't get involved. Wayman Jordan starts running, but he has the wherewithal to know that I can't cross the line of scrimmage. I have to stay lateral down the sideline or down the line of scrimmage, and then I can pitch it back. Perfect. He did it perfectly. Great pitch. The wide receiver sold it for a quick second. Mekhi Lemon goes downfield, and it was just a beautifully designed play. He had 3 guys that he could have thrown it to also. It wasn't just Mekhi Lemon that was wide open. On the other side of the field, 2 other receivers were wide open as well because as a defense, no one's ever really seen that. You don't expect that to happen. But where it went wrong, and I don't want to make an excuse, but John Ray Reed obviously ended up going downfield. And you get a little 2 to 3 yards. Sometimes it depends on the ref. They might give you a 3-yard leeway if you get down the field a little bit and you're trying to reach block or something like that. But he was down the field about 3 to 4 yards, and they called it, and it was the right call. But the frustrating part was that he wasn't needed to go downfield. There was no reason for him to jog down the field. It just looked like maybe he thought, okay, the play's going on. I lost, a sense of where I was on the field, and he just drifted a little bit. But at that point in time, you can't make that mistake. But the reason I think it happened is because all week, I guarantee you, they ran it with Killian over and over. You don't run your trick plays with your backups normally during the week. Now, you might run the bulk of your game plan with John Ray in there a couple plays, the ones during the week normally get 9 out of the 10 reps, and then you'll get maybe one or two each period with your backups to come in and run. Hey, these are our key plays on the run game. These are our key plays in the pass game. These are the protections we're going to work. Get a couple reps of these in live action. But when it comes to those trick plays, those are unique gadget plays. You run those with the starters. You don't really have the backups go in. So I just believe that Jean Ray Reed in that moment hadn't ran it at practice yet, or he did, but not enough times to where he knows, okay, I got to stay back. I think he got lost in the moment. And again, I'm not trying to make excuses for him because that's unacceptable. He has to be better in that situation. You can't allow an explosive play like that to get overturned because of a simple penalty like that. But it's tough because I feel like if Killian's in there, he's ran it a lot. He would have known what to do. But again, I mean, I don't want to make excuses for him, but that's a tough one because that was a crucial point in the game. That was a game changing type play. That was one of those plays that takes the crowd out of it.
A
I mean, we're
thousand
over here
percent.
dialing up. We're dialing up wildcat pitchbacks for a touchdown pass to Makai Lemon, making multiple guys miss. I'm over there as a defensive coordinator, like, we're in trouble. Lincoln Riley is in his bag this week. We are in trouble, and then you get it called back. So that's tough. And I kind of want to give people kind of a little bit more of a perspective on what happened in that play. But yeah, that's something with the backup center, John Ray Reed. You got to be able to, on the sideline, even if you're not getting reps of the play, taking mental notes. Okay, you got to make sure you stay back. This is a pass play. I can't be downfield, but unfortunately, it didn't work out in USC's favor, and that was a big momentum changer in this game.
Just from being there, it was one of those moments where the crowd collectively thought, okay, it's over. Like, okay, we
Yeah,
can't stop USC's offense. Like, we're out of this
yeah.
one. And then everyone noticed the flag. And then suddenly the you can't do that cheers start happening. I think obviously that's super
Oh, those are the
deflating
worst.
as an
I hate
offense
those.
because you're like, this incredible play just happened. I mean, what's crazy too, a little behind the scenes, I was in the radio booth for the first quarter, and the radio booth in that stadium happened to be right next to the coaches booth, the USC coaches
Yeah.
booth, and hearing them erupt for that play was just so
Oh,
it was incredible. And then
I mean,
obviously everyone's so like disappointed because how it's just calling that back. But yeah, it is so deflating, and I can only imagine from a player perspective, Cody, you hate feeling that way when you pull off something that
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, this is literally, and I'm looking at my notes to my side right now, and I typed about 3 lines of notes before I recognized that there was a flag,
Oh
and
no.
I put in all caps. What a play designed by Lincoln Riley, one of the best I've ever seen. What a great play! Just so I remember to go back and look at it, and then the next couple notes were got to be disciplined, unacceptable. Backup center have to know that you can't go downfield. You work that or you see that all week, even if you don't get the reps. So it went from my notes went from as high as it could be to complete letdown. So I
I
just I
mean,
hate
what a
it because you're
great
never gonna. I mean, you
microcosm
might
of the
get the
game though. You know what I mean? Like the
yeah,
game
that's true.
itself
That's a
was
good
like
point.
highs and highs and lows and lows. It was
Yeah,
a roller coaster.
and you got to overcome those and injuries happen and things like that happen, but yeah, it was just I hate that that's a play that will be forgotten because it doesn't count, and it was such a great effort too by Makai Lemon. I mean,
Yeah.
after he caught it, made multiple guys miss, and,
Yeah,
and then
the
finished in the
patience
end zone,
too.
and it just felt like that was that all right turning point. Lincoln Riley's on it, the offense is rolling. They had that early fumble, but it doesn't matter because we've got so many things that we can do that we're going to outpace your defense, and we're going to force you to try to keep up on offense. Now obviously that wasn't the case later in the game because the defense that we're about to talk about in a second started struggling. So it ended up, even if USC had that and it kept going, it probably would have still been a shootout. But yeah, that's a tough one. And now it sucks even worse because I don't know if we'll be able to use it again because now it's on film
Yeah.
and you don't normally run the same trick play twice. But yeah, either way, it's two parts to that. Great play call by Lincoln Riley, great execution. But having a backup center in that hasn't ran it a lot that week, you just got to be more disciplined. You got to execute that play a little bit better. Again, not to make excuses for John Ray Reed because he's a veteran and he knows better, but it was tough to see. I think that would have been something would have been awesome to talk about for a long time.
What's interesting too is that wasn't the first time that Wayman was in Wildcat that game. I believe the first drive as well on that 4th and 1 on USC's own 45. They went with Wayman and Wildcat. Little risky, but it definitely paid off. But I felt like on the whole,
Yeah.
USC was pretty efficient when it came to 3rd down and 4th down.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that Wildcat too. That's a great point. I mean, that just goes back to what we talk about with Lincoln Riley, to where he's going to show you the same look and formation, a couple times in the game, lull you to sleep, and go run play, and then we're gonna have a trick play off of it. And as a defense, that's just so hard to defend. But yeah, talking about third and fourth down, they did a great job. I know. There were some things that they could have worked on, and they had some turnovers in this game, and there were some issues on offense and things that they could get corrected. And they had the injuries and offensive line and all these moving parts. One area that I thought they were perfect in was on third and fourth down on those got to have it situations. On third down, they were 8 of 14. And just for reference, as an offense, when you go into a game, you want to shoot for about 40%, 45%. That's a winning day. USC was above 50%. And even more importantly, on some of those third downs, third and 5, third and 6, they were, guaranteeing 2 downs to where, okay, we run it on third and 5. If we don't get it, okay, that's fine. We're going to go for it on fourth down. So that's even more impressive when you look at it as a whole. And then fourth down, nearly flawless, 4 of 5 on the day. And that huge fourth down completion to Mekhi Lemon in the end zone to keep that game alive, to be able to have that play and to make that throw and to make that catch in that pressure situation. Because if they don't make that, the game's over, and we really don't have a chance to come back. And we're down 2 scores, and you could it's just would have been a huge mountain to climb to try to come back in that game. So I don't think we would have. So it's frustrating because when you look at we did so many things well, especially on the offensive side of the ball. We just couldn't overcome everything. And we gave ourselves a chance to win. And this team is good enough to win those games. That's why I think it's just something that keeps you up at night, because we have a roster and we have talent. Even with the injuries on both sides of the ball, this team is still good enough to compete in this conference and compete at that level. You just got to find a way to get the job done. And unfortunately, USC couldn't. But yeah, no, I wanted to give them some credit on third and fourth down. I thought they did a great job, and those pressure got to have it situation, because that shows you the character of this football team.
Alrighty, Cody, I want to talk about USC's defense. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from an SUV is a range of sizes to fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs, progress you can feel. And at Ralph's, you get high quality and low prices, so you never have to compromise your budget. Save on thousands of items throughout the store. Ralph's, fresh for everyone. Alrighty, Cody, looking at USC's defense, I want to start with the defensive line, because given what you talked about in the preview episode, I was expecting a certain type of dynamic in the trenches, and I just don't feel like it worked out that way.
Yeah, this was my biggest surprise in this football game. It really was. I thought this was going to be a game to where USC could dominate the line of scrimmage on defense and get after Luke Altmaier and force him to be uncomfortable and put pressure on this Illinois offensive line that's been struggling this entire year. I mean, they've given up 16 sacks already on the season going into this game. That was 130th in college football. They gave up 7 sacks the week prior to Indiana. They were struggling. When you have a game like that, it's easy to go into the next week and exploit some of those issues, especially when you have a defensive coordinator like Danton Lynn. And I said going into this game, I thought he was going to dial it up with his game plan, with getting pressure on Luke Altmaier. Now, I think he was handcuffed a little bit because of the injuries and because of some of the issues on the outside with the secondary, and we'll talk about that in a second. But overall, I was frustrated that we couldn't get home with the 4-man rush. This defensive line, in my opinion, or at least going into this game, I felt comfortable saying that we don't have to bring Eric Gentry. We don't have to bring secondary pressure. We don't have to blitz some of the safeties or bring Desmond Stevens on a pressure, because we can get home with a 4-man rush because of the talent up front. That wasn't the case. We struggled to get home on our pass rush. We were struggling in our one-on-one opportunities. We were struggling to get pressure on the edge with Lucas and Shelby and Crawford and guys that have been so dominant the first couple of weeks, which was frustrating, because that was a huge asset to this defense right now, especially with the
Yeah.
struggles we've had in the back end. I felt comfortable. Okay, we might not be great in coverage right now, but we're going to get home with our pass rush, especially in this game. So that will mask some of those issues. It wasn't the case, and it hurt us in this football game. And not only was our pass rush not up to the level I thought it was going to be, our run game was, for lack of a better word, just unacceptable. It was. And if we're being honest, that is not USC Trojan football. That's not what you expect from Danton Lynn. That's not what you expect from Coach Hinney and Coach Nua, because I know those are very good football coaches, and these guys are coached well, and you expect them to have better gap integrity and to be more physical at the point of attack and to know how to handle double teams and trust that your linebacker is going to fill from the second level. And we were just getting pushed off the line. It felt like every time they ran the football. And one of my notes in all caps was, we are not contacting the running backs for Illinois until they get at least to the second level. You can't win football games that way. Especially in the Big Ten, if you want to be great on defense, then your defensive line has to live on the other side of the backfield. They have to get pressure in the backfield, and we have done that. We were second in the country in tackles for loss. We were tied first for sacks. That was our MO of this defense, and it was non-existent in this football game. And you can tell I get into coach speak right now, and I get into that that frustration level, and I get like I'm in the film room talking to these guys because I expect more and I demand more out of these guys. And I know this coaching staff and the players demand more of themselves as well. And this fan base does too, because we know how good it looks and how good they can be. So, with all that being said, yeah, this was my biggest surprise, my biggest frustration. I mean, USC had one sack on the day, and that came from a DeCarlos Nicholson corner pressure. It wasn't even from the defensive line. Luke Altmaier was comfortable. When you have a quarterback like him, that's a veteran that has that experience, the worst thing you can do is let him sit back there and play 7-on-7. And he did that for the majority of this game. I mean, going through progression, he's going 1 to 2 to 3 to taking off and running, or one quick fake, guys wide open, let me get the ball out, and frustrating the defensive pass rush. Run game, not acceptable. It was worse than it looked too because of those fumbles. We did a great job of getting the ball out, but you can't live and die by those. You have to be able to make a stand, especially on the road. So yeah, that was a frustrating performance, and it surprised me. And that's something that I don't expect going forward. I really believe they're going to get this figured out and get it fixed when you have the coaching staff that USC has. But they got to do some soul searching today in the film room. This is accountability hour for that defensive line. They've got to step up, this week during the bye week, and then they've got to be better against Michigan, because if they're not, it's going to be a long day.
Well, I think it was surprising for everyone involved that Kamari Ramsey was not available for Saturday's game. Per Riley, the safety was throwing up. I think through the night, 6 a.m., they got the call that he was not feeling well. And then props to him at least, he came out in full pads, tried to warm up. I watched him do that, but he was doing it gingerly. You could just tell, like, when you have a stomach bug, you're just like, the last thing I want to do is go 100%. So feel for the guy. But obviously that hampered USC secondary even more, a unit that's had to struggle with injury so far this season. But on the whole, Riley said that, they expect Trojans to still step up in that sense, and he called the play by the secondary unacceptable. How do you make sense of just what went on there on Saturday, Cody?
Yeah, that was tough. That was big time news, and obviously you can never replace a guy like Kamari Ramsey, but you do have to have that next man up mentality. And unfortunately, USC struggled a little bit filling that role. And it's tough because Kamari plays so many different positions. He is like Eric Gentry on this defense, to where he has that versatility, to where he lines up at nickel and passing situations, and then he'll line up at nickel like a linebacker and play in the box and running situations. And then you put him back at safety when you go base defense. He just does so many things for this defense. And then to lose him the way that they did right before kickoff, that's so tough for a defensive coordinator, because now you didn't have a whole week to prepare as if it was an injury, to where we know, okay, we're going to be without Ramsey this week. These are the ways that we can make up for the productivity that he has. Now you find out the morning of because of food poisoning, and you're having to change your game plan on the fly. It's almost as if he got hurt in the game, to where you have to make those adjustments and try to fill the role in certain ways, and put different guys in there. And I want to give credit too, before I talk about the secondary, there were some young players that stepped up, and Reddick did a good job stepping up. He got thrown into the fire. Kevin Longstreet went out there, had to play some nickel, and then they started attacking him a little bit, but he was out there fighting and playing hard. And it's not just Ramsey, though. This was kind of a bigger issue right now with this USC defense, the injuries in the secondary. And then you lose a guy like Ramsey, it just kind of amplifies everything even more. So that was tough to see. But talking about the secondary as a whole, I thought the safeties did well for the most part. Christian Pierce, I mean, I got to give him credit, man. That was a huge play, to where he saved that touchdown, chased him down, made that tackle. And then a couple plays later, Eric Gentry knocks it out and he recovers the fumble. I mean, that was, actually, it was the next play. After that, he knocks the fumble out and Christian Pierce recovers it. That's just a huge hustle play. You can't teach that. That's effort. He was physical throughout this game. Bishop Fitzgerald too didn't play his best. I felt like he could have been a little better on some of his angles in the run game when he was coming downhill. But that's a veteran back there. But where I really had an issue in this game, and it sounds like a reoccurring theme, is with USC when they cover on the outside at the corner position, and even the nickel position in this game. It's just not good enough. And Riley said it perfectly. It is unacceptable. You have to be better. And it felt like in this game, Danton Lynn knew this. And I know that he's going to be criticized for his play calling. And I know he's going to be criticized for the performance of the defense, rightfully so. And he will tell you that, because he is one of those coaches that's going to take accountability and say, that's not good enough. I have to be better. But you could tell at times, to where the run game started working for Illinois and he wanted to load the box a little bit more. And he did that, or brought the safeties down, to be involved in the run game. But then you put Braylon Conley on an island and they have a slant for a touchdown that was just too easy. Or you put, DJ Harvey on an island, and you put these guys on an island because you want to stop the run game, but you can't get it done because you can't cover on the outside. And then you want to play coverage on the back end. All right, let's put some safety help over the top and drop, 7 or 8 guys to protect them. Well, then they're gashing you in the run game. So it just felt like, with Ramsey out, with some of the guys that were out as well in that secondary, with no one stepping up at that corner position. DeCarlos Nicholson had some good plays. I still feel comfortable with him. But outside of that, you can just really tell that it's a big issue on this football team, and it's a weakness on defense. And other teams are starting to realize that. And you could see Altmaier being the vet that he is. They'd load the box or they'd go motion, and we're playing coverage and we fly the safety over and we try to play tighter to the line of scrimmage with the linebackers. I'm just going to go RPO and throw the slant behind it and hit a touchdown pass. You guys try to load the box. Let's go RPO and kick it out and force your DBs to tackle on the outside or get the ball to our running backs out of the backfield. They just played off of what we were doing on defense so well. And you could see Danton Lynn trying different things and different guys at different spots. But when you have deficiencies and when you have legit issues in the secondary, especially when it's in the coverage, they're going to take advantage of that. And the good teams will. And that's exactly what Illinois did. We have to get that fixed. That's something we have to get guys healthy. Hopefully we get guys healthy this week and they're going to be ready to go, for Michigan and Notre Dame coming up before the next bye. But right now with the guys that we have on the field, someone has to step up and someone has to start making some plays. It can't be that easy for the opposing offense to get it done in the run game. And then when they throw it, to have some easy completions and some explosive plays in the pass game as well.
Alrighty, Cody, I know there's probably a lot more to say, but we are this year trying to keep it short and sweet and more simple this time around. So overall, your thoughts, Cody, before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, just a couple final things for me. I mean, overall, it's frustrating because I know how bad these guys want it. It's never been about effort for me. I love the players that are on this roster. I love the way that these guys go out there and put their body on the line week in and week out. Jade Mayava is an absolute warrior. Wayman Jordan bouncing back after that fumble. He's a warrior. This offensive line, guys stepping up, guys on defense, they fight their tails off. That's never a question for me when it comes to effort and the want to. The biggest thing right now is just execution and some of these minor mistakes that turn into major problems. And when you look back at the tape and you look back at this game as a whole, those little things that we got away with through the first 4 weeks, we didn't get away with in this game. And we talked about that. You've got to get that corrected because it'll come back and bite you. And it could be the difference in these football games. And some of those things were dealing with some of the injuries and guys having to step up. The other one was penalties. That got the best of us. And this football game, being disciplined, trusting and doing your job and not trying to do other guys' job. And, on defense, I get it. It's frustrating at times when, you're not stopping the run. So you maybe try to do a little bit more. And then in turn, you hurt your team more than you help them. You just have to trust and be better and do your job on both sides of the football. And like I mentioned, the penalties, there's some crucial moments in this game that would have been points or a pass interference call that led to points and things that we got away with against the first couple opponents you're not going to get away with in these next 4 games. And that was obvious on Saturday against Illinois. And then the other thing, I just, playing the game a little bit more of playing chess in this game. That last drive where Lincoln Riley, we had the ball inside 2 minutes. I get that you need to score to win the game. I get that. And that's 100% true because what Coach Riley said is a fact. I've seen games where guys try to get too cute and, hey, let's run some clock off and play that game. And then you end up in a third and fourth and long and you lose the game and don't even give yourself a chance. So if you have the one-on-one matchup with Makai Lemon in that situation, I don't blame Jade Mayava and Coach Riley for taking that shot because you're not going to get a lot of those, especially when you have a guy like Makai Lemon who they're going to want to take out of the game plan. But in a perfect world, I just wish that we maybe could have ran it on first down. Throughout that drive, we already had 4 rushing plays, 4 passing plays. The play before, Wayman Jordan just had a 13-yard run. I wish we could have played the long game and forced Brett Bielema to take some timeouts and take some time off the clock and then protect our defense a little bit. But again, this is all hindsight. I'm nitpicking. Overall, USC did enough to win this football game. And even with the injuries and the penalties and some of the issues they had and their deficiencies in the run game and not getting pressure on the quarterback and some of those early turnovers, USC still had a chance to win this game. It's just one of those that I know I speak for myself and I probably speak for a lot of Trojan fans. It keeps you up at night because there's so many woulda, coulda, shouldas. But at the end of the day, it's a lesson. You learn from it. Everything that USC still wants to accomplish this year is in front of them. This is a tough conference. We saw that Oregon and Penn State game. Teams are going to lose. Teams are going to pull off some upsets. There's going to be, some up and downs throughout the year. You've got to be able to weather the storm. You got to handle it. Recover this week. Get healthy. Treat these next 2 games as a 2-game season. Then you have another bye. Handle Michigan at home. Travel well against Notre Dame. But yeah, I mean, bigger picture things, I still feel good about this football team. I'm optimistic. I really think we have some key players on this roster, a great coaching staff, guys that can get the job done. This one just hurts. And I'm not going to lie to you. It does. It hurts. And it's a game that this team needs to learn how to win when it's close like that, especially on the road. But overall, I'm always going to fight on. I'm always going to fight with this football team, support our guys, show up in the Coliseum after this bye week, take a bye week with us. Keely and I are taking a little break. Everyone else, get your mind off of USC football, but come ready to go against Michigan, and let's get the season back on track.
Alrighty, you heard the man. We are taking a break. Bye week, got to rest and recuperate just like the team. That's going to wrap it up for this one. Cody, thanks so much for your insight and your analysis. But that's going to wrap it up. Like I said, that's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.